Real quick, while I was doing this review, I had every intention of dulling down or dialing back the rosiness in the cheeks, but then I went and watched a bunch of tutorials on it to try to get an idea, and for one, there was no way I was going to use alcohol or baby wipes, and for two, when I saw people dial it back with water, it looked like it was just smudging it, taking some off obviously, but smudging what was left, and that's not something I'm willing to do either. So I talk about it to a certain point, I think up until the final thoughts, and then I decided not to do it. So I didn't want you to make it all the way through and think that I did. Let's get started. What's up, everybody? It's your favorite tadpole's favorite nerd, and today we are looking at the Sideshow Collectibles 1/1 scale Baby Yoda, or Grogu, I suppose now, statue, non-articulated. I'm gonna get the Hot Toys as well. Let me explain myself just so you don't think I'm a complete nut. I got this one, the Hot Toys was announced the next day, and I was like, mother... Anyway, and I said to my wife that the Hot Toys was coming, and she was like, well, I'd love to have a second one. And anytime my wife wants to get more stuff to decorate the house with, I kind of just go in regardless. So we're gonna talk about this guy. It's kind of not a ton to show off. I'll show what I can. We'll do some final thoughts, of course. We'll talk about the soft goods, and we'll go from there. But first, we do have to talk about accessories. So he comes with this display base, and honestly, there's not a lot to it. Obviously, the peg goes into a hole in his foot, and it has some sculpted detail and such here. Let's see if I can pick it up. And I guess there's a layer of paint on there, but like I feel like, you know, they could have kind of gone crazy with weathering and stuff and rust and all sorts of cool stuff. I mean, the Mandalorian takes place in a very weathered world. You know, even the stormtroopers can't keep their armor clean in that thing. So it seems like a little bit of a wasted opportunity, but the sculpt is nice and it has a good heft to it. He also comes with the ball, right, that goes on to the controls. It's a nice silver paint. It has a nice blue accent and blue stripe around it, and it has a magnet in it that will connect, or attach rather, to the inside of his hand, his right hand. Likeness-wise, in regards to sculpt, I feel like they nailed it. Like the overall face sculpt, the wrinkles in the eyebrows, the depth of the eyebrows, the shape of the nose, mouth, lips, eyelids, etc., ear proportions to the head, like it all really works. Even the kind of soft goods, for lack of a better term, hair, seems to be fairly appropriate. And this makes sense because I believe it was sculpted by the guy who actually sculpted one of the puppets for the show. So it would make sense that they kind of nailed it. And I think they have. Now, where I start to have some discrepancies is I'm not sure if the tone of green is quite right. It seems a little paler than it should be, in my opinion. And then obviously the cheeks, and it's like it stood out to me the moment I saw it. The Patreon folks saw my kind of initial impressions of it, and it like I mentioned it almost straight away. My kids mentioned it almost straight away, and we're gonna see if this thing is effective that people have been talking about here in a bit. But that's a slight issue I have with it as well. But like the texture and stuff of the eyeballs, like inside, like the iris and all of that, and the whites around the eyes, like there's a lot of real attention to detail in a lot of the deco of this thing. There's just a few things that I want to point out because it is an expensive piece. Taking a step back and looking at the full body, I think they kind of nailed it. The differences in textures of the soft goods, the layers, and how they flap and overlap around one another is all on the money. My only issue with this in terms of likeness, whether it be the face or the soft goods or the kind of the overall presentation, is ultimately color choice for the color of the skin and the color of the cheeks. Now, it's one of those things where like it's under the lights, it's on the review table, everybody's gathered around and trying to scrutinize it, right? And I'm with you, and I'm in the same boat, and I do the same thing. However, in a day-to-day circumstance, on a day-to-day basis, I guess rather, when people are coming past it, walking past it, seeing it on my fireplace, which is where it resides, nobody mentions a word about it other than how awesome it is. Do you know what I mean? But it's my job here to be critical, and if I was being critical, it's a color issue. In terms of plastics and such, in sculpt and paint, we've kind of already talked about the face, but if I were to go into any more detail regarding it, I would mention how like the ears get a little softer, so they're a little, I mean, they're not posable, but it's like, you know, you don't have to worry about like it being brittle or anything. And it looks, when you're thinking about displaying it, if you're thinking about buying one, I would display it low because it looks better looking up at you, as opposed to like being somewhere high. Let's move on to some other sculpted painted parts. So you get the hands, and that works well. They're sculpted beautifully. The nails are painted beautifully. Like, they look dirty and grimy, and like there's some, like, that's the only place where he looks 50 years old. You know what I mean? And all the skin freckling and stuff, the wrinkles in the skin, all of that looks great. As you can see, it changes, or you can't see, it changes at about the elbow into just the base plastic. And that's going to be pretty much the same for the ball holding hand. Same kind of detailings, and same terms of quality. And then the only other thing to really mention are the feet, and same deal. The nails look great. The skin freckling looks great. The skin textures look great. As you can see, it changes into that base plastic. Sorry for the focus. About halfway up the calf, and God bless. And then you see the hole at the bottom of the foot. And then, you know, there's some colors and such, some tones. Let me back out a little bit. You guys can't see anything. At the bottom, some reds and stuff that are used. So, you know, where they decided to put love, it was received. We'll go ahead and kind of talk about the soft goods now. We have the outer collar that has like the fleece, and there is a posable wire inside of it, so you can get it, you know, a little tight around him, and you can pose it and you can build it out if you want to frame it out. There's some flexibility there. And then he kind of has the potato sack, and this is a separate piece. It's sewn in, it's attached to the potato sack. The potato sack has a zipper, and then just to give you an idea what's underneath, not a whole lot. Just bare Baby Yoda belly. So nothing really exciting there. Well, not that you would want something exciting, but it's not like they went the extra step and sculpted wrinkles and skin textures and paint and such in the belly, which, to be fair, I don't think they had to. Now, the potato sack does have a nice texture to it, and like all of the kind of like frills and threads that are coming loose, I think add a nice touch. And it has like obviously two tones where it overlaps here as well as on the sleeves and such. And then the sleeves had the same kind of fleece material sewn in for the collar or the cuff of the sleeve. Now underneath this is an inner layer of a softer fabric, and that also has a bit up here. Once again, I kind of feel like for the money it should have been its own layer, but if you can see here, like it's just a collar. It's like a faux collar sitting around the neck, and then, you know, this inner sleeve here kind of just connects to the arm, and it's like it just doesn't it's like it's trickery. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just trying to get the aesthetic, but it doesn't really pride itself on just being a complete thing. Does that make sense? Not a whole lot else to talk about regarding the soft goods. I will turn it around so you can see how it clumps up in the back, and like all of this, like there's like this goes into this separate material here, which is more like the inner layer, and that works well as well. And I kind of wish there was a frame around the bottom of the cloak, because I have found that, like, as I pose them and stuff, not pose them I guess, but as I move the statue in display, like, it has a tendency to like get tight around the bottom, where it tends to look better, a little bit more full around the bottom. And if you had a wire there, that would have fixed that problem as well. And I know it's dark in here, but there is Baby Yoda with so the folks on the fireplace here, they get festive for the holidays, you know, depending on the holidays. So size comparison wise, there he is with quarter scale Batman. And he's actually like probably 6 inches shorter. Final thoughts wise, and this guy is really pushing the limits of my new space, but still barely fits. Let's talk about the negatives. I feel like they could have put more detail in the base. Even though you don't see it when I have his cloak spread out like this, it would have been nice. Speaking of his cloak, I wish that they would have had a bit of a wire at the bottom so that you could have posed that a bit better. That would have been a cheap and easy fix and allowed you to see a little bit more sculpted detail, of which this guy does have on those toes. We'll stick with the cloak and say that the under tunic would have been nice if it was a full thing instead of kind of a cheat. I guess ultimately it doesn't matter once it's displayed, but now that I know, and you will too, quite quickly when you get this guy, how they did it, it is a little disheartening and it is a little disappointing. And now we'll get into Deco stuff. I feel like the cloak should have been more weathered. It looks like it came right out of the dryer, and much like the base, it doesn't seem to really fit into the world. And then lastly, and most obviously, the rosiness in the cheeks as well as paleness of the skin tone seems a little off to me. Now, the team responsible for this, I do think, have working experience on the show, so maybe it just comes through different efforts, been through the filters and whatever it goes through that process in post-production, and perhaps that's part of the reason. Moving on to the positives, the sculpt is phenomenal. While the palette color I take issue with from time to time, the actual application of the paint is done really well. The hair works really well. The soft goods and likeness, as well as the different types of fabrics and seams and frays here and all that kind of stuff, all of that is done really well. The nails are done really well. I love the magnet gimmick with the ball in his hand. Unfortunately, you can't see it. And he does display well as long as you have him at a lower vantage point so that you're looking down at him and not looking up at him. If you're looking up at him, it gets very strange, which is a bit of a bummer because I did have him initially planned going pretty high up. That is no longer a possibility. With that being said, I'd probably wait on the Hot Toys at this point. I don't have any regrets in regard to this, but it certainly isn't what I was hoping for. A lot of good things about it. It does display well, but if you were gonna get one, I'm not sure I'd go with this one. I'm guessing the reason why this is more of a statue and the Hot Toys is more of a figure is due to licensing, since they're both 1/1 scale. One probably got licensed for the statue, the other for the figure, and that's how that cookie crumbled. So I'm anxious to see what they do. I'll be getting that as well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.